The interesting thing for me personally is now that I've been a Freemason for about a year, I can see, get out of there, bug. Bugs are interrupting me. I can see where Matt has skipped over some sources that he shouldn't have. And he's had some assumptions about how Freemasonry operates when it doesn't do so. And I understand why he has those assumptions, because he simply doesn't know. Well, if he doesn't know, he shouldn't be writing on the subject. This book is to simply, supposedly, reassure the faithful that everything is okay with Mormonism, and Freemasonry is a pale, secondary, second-rate system compared to Mormonism. That's all this is. It's an apologetic for Mormonism. And in this instance, I can state uncategorically that it fails to establish that premise. Matt Brown doesn't understand Freemasonry. Why would you use him as the final word on it? I'm not going to. I would recommend you read his book. It's nothing personal against him at all. This is not an ad hominem attack. I like Matt. I consider him a good friend. I've really enjoyed his materials on Mormonism. When he gets into Masonry, he falls on his face. And I'm going to show you some explicit details of why. One of the articles that he wrote for the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies is on the Lambskin apron. And he does something positively horrible in that article. And if you're not a Freemason, you won't see it. And I'm going to show it to you, because that article should never have been printed without a Freemason looking at it. And if a Freemason did look at it, then the Freemason failed too. Because as a 1-year-old Freemason, the minute I read through that article for the first time, I was appalled at how seriously erroneous his conclusions were, based on a deliberate selection of a partial Masonic quote. He'll give the Book of Mormon the full benefit of the doubt, and he'll bring in all kinds of sources and analysis and very careful, serious, scholarly exegesis when it comes to the Book of Mormon. And the Freemason aspect, he simply backhands. And I'm going to backhand him back because he's absolutely wrong. Because I have the sources he used. And he's wrong. And that's serious. You don't have to lie about Freemasonry in order to compare it as an inferior product to Mormonism. It's apples and oranges. Freemasonry is vastly superior in its own ways to any religion on the planet. And I'll show you what I mean. And I say that as a Mormon Freemason. I love Mormonism. And I love Freemasonry. My advantage over Matt Brown and other LDS scholars who are discussing Freemasonry who happen to not be Masons is that I have insights, I have sources, and I have access to scholars that you guys never will. So you can't lie about it and expect to not get caught. And when I catch you, I will show it. Let me share with you what Matt says in his article on the Girded About with a Lambskin Apron in the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies, to show you the problematic nature of his research when it comes to Freemasonry. Like I say, Matt's a really good author when it comes to the Mormon studies, but his materials on Freemasonry are just not really good. He'll give the Book of Mormon great credit where credit's due, rightfully so, but he doesn't give Freemasonry its due, and I think that's unfortunate. He shows on page 125, this is in the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies for volume 6, number 2, 1997. On page 125, he says the lambskin apron mentioned in 3 Nephi 4:7 can be seen from an ancient perspective. And then he goes on and he shows that ancient perspective really quite well. I thought it was well done. When he gets to the lambskin apron in Freemasonry, he seems to me to diss it. He doesn't give it its due at all. And that's unfortunate. That really is unfortunate because it deserves a better treatment. It's one of the better, stronger symbols of Freemasonry. He says, page 149, he says, Freemasons are invested with a lambskin apron during their initiation rituals, but this apparel does not seem to have an ancient and distinguished background. That's absolutely false. And then he says, Masonic historians, in the plural now, he says Masonic historians admit that when it comes to the question of antiquity, almost all that has been written about the origin of the Masonic apron is of little real value. And all he does is he quotes one Freemason's approach. Yet he says Masonic historians in the plural. Matt's wrong. There may be one Freemason in the Ars Quatuor Coronatorum who said this, but it was way back in 1892, and there's been a lot of research done since that time on the Masonic apron. What Brown fails to realize, because he's not a Freemason, and I'm going to emphasize that because the only real way to understand Masonry is to be a Mason. He'll quote someone from 1897 as a supposed authoritative source, and it's the year 2010 already. He seems to think he's given the final say-so on an apron, giving one man's idea way back in 1897. What he fails to realize is that Arturo de Hoyos and S. Brant Morris have noted in their book, Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? Now this is a reprint of 2010. They notice this. Within our fraternity, no one person can speak for Freemasonry. This is on page 236. This is actually James Tressner's appendix in the book, Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? It says, within our fraternity, no one person can speak for Freemasonry. A Grand Master can speak on organizational matters within his jurisdiction, just as the Grand Commander can speak on organizational matters within his southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite. But no one, not a Grand Master, not a Grand Commander, not even Albert Pike himself, can speak for Masonry when it comes to the meanings of its teachings. That is something each Mason must seek and find for himself. No one can speak for Freemasonry. And perhaps the reason that's so hard for people to understand is because everybody wants to speak for Christianity. And I would add, everyone wants to speak for Mormonism in their comparison between Mormonism and Freemasonry. And that's just not how it works. And it's an interesting situation because as this text here, A Daily Advancement in Masonic Knowledge by Wallace McLeod is the editor and S. Brent Morris the associate editor. This is volume 34 in the Masonic Book Club for 2003. Here's one of the issues that we have to understand when we're discussing Freemasonry and quoting Freemasons. Perhaps the greatest problems, this is on page 211, perhaps the greatest problems and therefore the greatest responsibilities arise from attempts to give a personal interpretation of the philosophy of Freemasonry or its relationship with religion. It would, I think, be true to say that if 6 brethren were asked to define what Freemasonry means, for them, 6 different answers would be given. Now, one of the strengths of our institution is that while the principles are laid down, it has no dogma, and it's totally lacking in theology. While the ornaments and jewels are given an individual symbolism within the ritual of Freemasonry,